Welcome to the TNT Effect, the Athletes Podcast. I'm Dr. Tiara, Doctor of Physical Therapy and Certified Athletic Trainer. And today I'm speaking with the highly decorated 2016 Paralympic Silver Medalist, Hailey Danz. What's up, Hailey?
Oh, what's up? That was quite the intro. Thank you.
You are welcome. All right, so you've done so much in your career, and before we get to all of those accolades, how did you get started as a para triathlete?
Well, there's a little bit of a story behind that. So I definitely did not find the sport of triathlon. It found me. I was I discovered the sport when I was in college. I was working at an adaptive sports organization in Chicago, where I was going to school, and my boss there was a triathlete. And at that point, I had no real background in swimming, biking, or running. I was active in sports as a kid, but after losing my leg to cancer when I was 12, kind of took a break from sports, thinking that there was not really anything out there that I could do. And then, when I was introduced to the adaptive sports world, and my boss Carrie, who really kind of introduced me to the sport of triathlon, it kind of just opened up my world. And I kind of picked up all three all at the same time. And again, had like no real background. It was all completely foreign to me, but ended up really falling in love with the sport. So that was, almost 10 years ago, which is a little bit crazy. But yeah, I did a couple of races and just loved that feeling of pushing myself and accomplishing something great. And really all it took was a couple of races before I decided that it was something I wanted to pursue long term.
Not really having any experience with biking, running, swimming, how in the world did you take to it so well and like Paralympian?
Well, I was super fortunate in that I had a lot of really great mentors, as I was getting started in the sport, other athletes who were competing at the international level. And so it was kind of just always something that I was surrounded by. I also got started in the sport kind of right when it was announced that triathlon was going to be making its Paralympic debut in Rio in 2016. So there was all this excitement around, the Paralympics and triathlon as I was getting into it. So, it was something that I was just always around. And so I kind of think that, the dreams and the goals of those that I was surrounded by kind of just rubbed off on me. And, I did have these great mentors who were already competing to kind of show me, what it was going to take to compete at that level. So yeah, I don't think I would have escalated as quickly as I did if it weren't for the environment that I was surrounded in.
Man, that is amazing that you took to the sport and then like became like one of the top athletes in your sport in such a short amount of time. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it took a lot of discipline, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially I think back to, when I was just getting started, and the discipline that it took just to learn how to run again. Because again, I'd lost my leg as a kid. I hadn't run in 8 years. And so just getting back into that was such a struggle. And I remember at the very beginning, just being so frustrated by it and thinking like, you know what, this probably isn't for me. But again, I think just having people, other amputees that I knew that were running, it kind of showed me like, okay, no, this is possible. Like people can do it. And I just need to, put in a little bit of work every day. So that was kind of what I did. You know, I would show up every day. Sometimes it was only for 10 minutes a day. But I would put my running leg on, I would put in some work, and it was really that discipline and that consistency that over time, you know, led to me kind of getting the hang of it, and then eventually falling in love with it.
So you mentioned you were in sports as a kid. Like, did you dream of becoming a pro athlete?
Yeah, you know, I was big into basketball and volleyball when I was a kid. So, you know, fifth, sixth grade, that was kind of where I saw myself going. Don't know how well that would have panned out for me because I'm 5'3". But, you know, at the time when I was in fifth grade and 5'3", that was kind of my jam. But yeah, I mean, when cancer happened and my life kind of took a detour, I think the opposite was true. You know, I just kind of assumed that sports was going to be something that I was not going to be able to do anymore, which was kind of heartbreaking because it was such an important part of my identity for so long. But, and you know, I did, after losing my leg, I kind of dabbled in a few different sports. And, you know, kind of went back to the games that I played before, and just found that, you know, I couldn't quite compete at the level that I was at before. And so I found that frustrating. But I think that's what I liked about triathlon, because it was something that I didn't do before I lost my leg. So I didn't really have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically you found a new love for something that wasn't like, it didn't feel like a loss in regards to your sport that you had experience playing. So now this was just new territory that you had to chart and then explore. So it was like, okay, let me jump into this wholeheartedly, and you know, now I'm basketball, volleyball, that's gone.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So as a professional athlete, you travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What is that like?
Oh man, it's amazing. I am so lucky. You know, I've gotten to go to so many cool places. And you know, it's interesting because when I started competing internationally in 2012, you know, I really just kind of treated everything as like a business trip, you know. And so I would go to these awesome places, you know, New Zealand and London and Japan, and you know, go there, and I knew that I was there for you know, for a race. And so I, you know, was like really careful about everything that I was doing beforehand. I would race and I would leave the next day. So I never really got to experience like where I was and experience the culture and the unique, whatever unique things there were about the place that I was. But a couple of years ago, I started to realize like I am so fortunate that I get to do this. And so I've made a rule for myself that every time I travel somewhere, I have to take at least a day afterwards to really explore the place and, you know, kind of get a feel for where I am, because I know that I'm not going to be able to do this forever, and I won't really want to just take advantage of everything, all these opportunities that I have.
I'm glad you do that, because I've heard from various athletes, they talk about, I go to all these different places, but not having the opportunity to really enjoy it and experience the culture and just experience traveling, because it is, like you said, like a business trip. So you go there, take care of business, and then you leave. And it's like, well, dang it. All these opportunities, wait a minute, I need to take a moment. Enjoy.
Totally. Well, and I think that was also just part of my development as an athlete, and like figuring out what works for me. You know, at the beginning, I kind of thought that I had to be super serious all the time and really focused on the race and on, you know, everything I needed to be doing going into that. And just as I have grown, I've realized that I actually do better when I'm able to throw in some fun. You know, and that's not to say that I'm going crazy, but you know, yeah, I'm gonna go to the beach and I'm gonna play in the waves and I'm gonna go to the Australian zoo and hang out with the kangaroos. Like, And, if that means I'm on my feet a little bit more than I would have been, like, I'm okay with that because it feeds my soul, and that's how I perform the best.
Right. And so when you're traveling and obviously like being able to keep up with proper nutrition and proper sleep habits and all those different things, how do you manage all of that?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it takes practice. And I feel like it's something that I just started to get good at within the last couple of years. Um, I'm already, of course, I haven't traveled in quite a while now. And so, if travel ends up opening up next year and we're back on the road, it's definitely going to take some getting used to, because I was at the point where like I was just in the habit of doing things. But, I think for me the key is being super flexible, because, the food is different everywhere in the world. And, sleep schedules are going to change constantly, especially when you're going from, Japan to the States to Europe within a 3-week period. So, I've kind of learned like, sleep when I can, sleep when I feel like it, and be really just kind of flexible in the foods that I eat, and really not try to be married to like a specific pre-race routine because stuff is going to change. But I think it also helps that every time we travel, we have a huge support crew that comes with us. And I think two of the critical people that help out in this department are our physiologist and our dietitian. So, when we're out there on the road and, we might have questions or there's kind of a detour kind of thrown into the routine, those guys are there to kind of set us back on track and offer guidance. So that's super helpful for sure.
Do you all also travel with like an athletic trainer or physical therapist?
Mm-hmm. We've always have physical therapist, bike mechanic, sports psychologist. Who am I missing? I think that's
the team doctor.
the dietitian and the physio. Yeah, that's our crew. And a couple coaches and our manager. So yeah, we roll deep. But it's awesome. Like that's one of the things I miss the most about racing actually, is just, being around our support crew, because they're all such great people who care so much about helping us out, and really just using their area of expertise to bring out the best in all of us. So,
and then your teammates, because you all have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we do. I think that's just a big part of our team culture, is having fun. Like, I don't know if I've ever came across a team that laughs as much as we do. And it's cool because, triathlon is an individual sport. And so, there is no real incentive for us to have as deep of a bond as we do, because it's not like we're all, on paper working towards the same goal. But yeah, I don't know. Like I've kind of been in the program for as long as it's been around. And so I was kind of one of those pioneers that was part of setting the culture of the team. And, I think we all just kind of realized that, like, if we can have a good time, and keep things kind of just light and fun, we're all going to perform better. So, yeah, I don't know. Even though it's an individual sport, I feel like there's a really deep sense of cohesion, and team chemistry. And I think that's kind of our secret sauce.
I like the secret sauce.
Yeah.
All right. So you spent time as a resident athlete at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. Mm-hmm. Tell us how that was. What was your experience?
Yeah.
What support you got there on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So yeah, I moved from Chicago to Colorado Springs in the fall of 2017, because triathlon was starting its first ever resident program at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. So before that, we were all kind of spread throughout the country, just doing our own thing. training wise. And then in 17, they brought together, some of the top athletes to Colorado Springs to just be based there and train together in a squad environment. So I'm actually still a member of the program. I have moved off campus into a place in town, but still train out of Colorado Springs at the training center with my squad mates. So that's really been a game changer for me. I think just having all of the members of our support team in one place. Before that, I was working remotely with my coach. I was working remotely with a dietitian, sports psych, all that. And so to be here and have everyone, on the ground in the same spot is like really, really critical. I'm probably meeting with someone on my performance team every single day. And when I'm not meeting with them, they're all talking to each other. Just, okay, did you notice that Hailey was doing this? Like, how can we help her or how can we each use all of our areas of expertise to help her out? So I feel incredibly supported living here in this environment. I think one of the big perks is sports medicine. That was something that before I came here and was part of the program, it was a huge out-of-pocket cost for me. And now, just being able to access physical therapists and athletic trainers pretty much on the daily, it's really just allowed me to like stay on top of little injuries because I'm able to get in as soon as something's feeling kind of funny. And then of course, just the team environment is huge. I'm able to train with a couple of the women that I actually compete against. So we're not only competitors, but we're training mates. But that's been so cool for me, just because there's nothing quite like, or it's hard to push yourself to the level that we do without each other. And I think that, we've kind of bought into this idea that, we can strive to be the best athletes that we can be while also building each other up and supporting each other. And that, in fact, when we support each other, that makes us better. So yeah, it's a really cool kind of dynamic that we have going on, but I feel super lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you all have swept the podium.
Yeah, we did.
So yeah. I think that you have some really good competitive people to train with, but also like as a unit, you're able to go out and dominate.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think, yeah, it's so much more fun standing on the podium when you're standing next to your friends, and I really think that, of course, I want to succeed. But I also want my friends to succeed. And I want to be able to share it with them. I think it makes the whole experience that much more fulfilling.
Yeah. And so now COVID hit, shut the training facility down. What was that like?
Yeah. So that was wild. So I was still living on site when COVID hit. And they shut down all of the training facilities, but they kept the dorms open so that those of us who kind of didn't have anywhere else to go still had a place to live. So that really meant a lot. And, it was interesting because we kind of went from, a couple hundred people living on site to 50 to 30, eventually down to 15 strong. And that kind of hung through March through June. So it was kind of a surreal time, but, I'm actually very grateful that I was living there when I did, because, I think it was one of the safest places that I could possibly have been. Again, everything at the training center was shut down except for the dorms and the cafeteria. So we were still able to get food to go, to just take back to our rooms. But I think that having just those brief interactions with the dining hall staff during those really lonely months, that kind of kept me going. I feel like if I didn't have that, I would have been, just really, really socially isolated like everyone else. But, I got to come into contact with the staff. They became even closer than they were before. And I felt like we really just had this little family environment going on. So yeah, all things considered, like I look back on that period of time and like it wasn't all that bad.
Okay. Well, you know what? Things could have been worse. So
Totally.
right.
Well, and also like I was very lucky in that I can still do 2/3 of my sport. The pool shut down and I wasn't able to swim, but I could still bike and run, either on a stationary trainer in my room or outside. So, when I looked at other athletes that, completely lost the ability to train, I realized I was still doing okay.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there were so many athletes who depended on the facility in order to train. And so not having that, not even being able to go to an outside gym or whatever the case was. Like, dang.
Totally.
So we talked a little bit about your challenges getting into the sport. What are some challenges that you deal with now?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges as a para athlete is just equipment. I'm in the process right now of kind of switching my entire running setup. Up until about a year ago, I ran without a knee joint, and so I would swing my leg out to the side. And then about a year ago, oh God, I can't believe it's been that long. I started using an artificial knee joint, so it swings through in like a more natural gait. So just getting used to that has been very challenging, because you're basically just relearning how to run. But with prosthetics, getting the fit dialed perfectly it takes a lot of work. And there's no real easy way to do it other than, making a little tweak, running on it for 5 miles, and then deciding if it was the right thing to do or not. And then also just as, weight and body composition fluctuate through the season, that's going to change the fit of the leg. And so, as I get fitter, I need to go to the prosthetist all the more frequently to get that fit just right. So that's certainly a challenge that I think is unique in para. Then of course, there's just the challenges that I think everyone faces, and that's the ebbs and flows of motivation. And just kind of, I think that I'm kind of at a point right now where the training load is like just starting to pick up. And there's a delta between, where I am right now and where I've been in the past, where I know that I can be. And so just kind of like, just dealing with that. And, trying not to get too frustrated by where I am right now, knowing that I haven't actually like, it's not the time for me to be like in peak condition. But as an athlete, you kind of just want to be there all the time,
Right. How do you maintain mental health?
I think that having balance is really important for me. Again, I like to have fun. I don't want my life to be completely just sport. And so, just making sure that I, kind of have friends outside of the sport, where we're able to just like not talk about triathlon, talk about other things is really important. Something that I discovered during quarantine and has really stuck with me is hiking. That's kind of like my new happy place now. And I find that if I'm feeling kind of burnt out on triathlon training, I might decide like, all right, I'm going to switch this run out today and I'm just going to go on a hike. Not bring the watch, just get out in nature. And I've found that brings me a lot of joy and is really good, kind of hitting the reset button.
That's good, because you have to figure out what, in those moments that you spoke of, you have to figure out what is it that will bring you back. And as you said, reset. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, hiking's good. Nature is good. Doing something outside of the sport, essentially.
Yeah. Which is hard when you're me, because it's like, yeah, people are like, what do you like to do for fun? And I'm like, I like to ride my bike. And they're like, that doesn't count. That is your sport. I'm like, yeah, no, but I genuinely enjoy riding my bike. And for most people, that's like, that's a thing, right? So yeah, finding stuff outside of the sport can be challenging, but I'm working on it.
Now, do a lot of people recognize you when you go out and about?
Nah. Which is actually great. I don't know if I am down for the life where people would recognize me.
Well,
I like to fly under the radar. Yeah.
So, and I don't know, what type of money is into the sport, and how much money you get or whatever, but how do you manage your money?
Yeah. So that's an interesting part, because life as an athlete, especially with what I do, it's kind of, things ebb and flow for sure. And so, my primary income comes from speaking at company events. And so I try to time that with my season so that, when I'm in the off season and not traveling as much, training as much, try and get all those gigs in, so that when the summer hits, I can really just focus on training. So it makes it for an interesting money managing cycle, though, because it kind of works out to be like a feast or famine type situation. But I'm also able to rely on a quarterly stipend from USA Triathlon, from being on the national team, which kind of helps offset a lot of my training expenses. So I think it kind of just takes a lot of foresight and foresight, because the income is inconsistent. But I leave a pretty simple life. And I really don't spend a lot of money. And so it hasn't been too challenging.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now,
yeah.
How do you prep for your competitions?
Mentally, from a training perspective?
Yeah, I mean, do you have some type of race day ritual or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do like to come up with a pre-performance plan going into a race, but I like to keep it pretty flexible, just because every race is different. Some races we have the opportunity for a swim warm-up, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you can get a bike warm-up, sometimes you can't. Sometimes we're racing at 7 in the morning, sometimes it's 4 p.m. And so, I've learned over the years that it's best to not have a ritual, because things can change so much. So instead, what I like to do is just have a general idea of what works for me. And then, a couple days before the race, once I have an idea of what exactly I'm dealing with, I'll write it down and map it out, what I'm going to eat, what my warm-up's going to be, etc. For me, writing it down is incredibly important, though, especially, when there's a 4 p.m. race. I think a lot of other athletes will, start to feel kind of anxious, and, lunchtime will hit and they'll be like, you know what, I don't need to eat. It'll be fine. Because who's hungry when they have that much nerves going on, right? But you can't do that. You can't just not eat lunch for a 4 o'clock race. And so I found that when I write down what I'm going to eat and when I'm going to do it, when the time comes and I think to myself, oh, you know what, I'm not that hungry, I look down at what I wrote and I'm like, no, you need to do this. And I found that that's worked really well for me.
You know what? I like that plan, because it's basically it's like writing goals, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
see it, and then you achieve them and check them off, right?
Totally.
Now, do you
Yeah.
set goals on a regular basis, like for your season, for the off season?
Yeah, that's something that I'll do. Typically once a year, I'll have a big goal setting session where I kind of, look at what I want to do over the course of the season. And then, every couple of months, I'll kind of come back and revisit what I set and kind of ask myself, like, okay, am I on track to do this? Have I already achieved it? Do I need to change the goal, make it something bigger? Or was that maybe a little bit unrealistic, and do I need to, maybe swerve a little bit? But, that's where I also think that having process goals is really important. You know, the outcome goals are kind of they're reliant on so many other factors, what other people are doing, you know, weather, course conditions, all that stuff. And so if I can make goals that are, more tied to my process, I found that those are much easier to control, versus like just the outcome ones.
Okay. Now, earlier you spoke about speaking engagements. So when you do those, when you have those speaking engagements, who is typically your audience?
It kind of varies. But I'm typically speaking to, just businesses that are looking for just kind of motivation type speaking. And in that, I usually kind of bring in all the lessons that I've learned through sport, which include a lot of like principles in sports psychology, and kind of bring them into the business world, because there is so much overlap there. But, most people that are working in corporate America, are not super familiar with these concepts that are so familiar to us in sport. So it's been cool because I feel like, people have responded really well to some of those principles, and I think they found that there's a lot of translation into their sector.
Have you ever had the opportunity to speak to younger athletes?
Yeah, here and there I'll speak to like high school teams, and that's always cool. Just being able to kind of share the journey that I've taken. I've learned so much. I think back to when I was in high school, and how little I knew then. And so it's kind of fun to be able to share some of that next generation.
Well, in that, what are some things you would tell younger athletes who want to play at the professional level?
Yeah, well, I think one of my things, I keep coming back to it, but, having fun is so important. And I think a lot of young athletes do get really caught up in the just the performance aspect of things, and they kind of forget to enjoy it along the way. But I've learned that when it comes to longevity in sport, enjoyment is the biggest thing. Anyone can have a great season, but to be able to sustain it year after year, that's where I think you have to kind of just make room for humor and fun. And then with that, as far as longevity goes, I think consistency in training is really, for me, the biggest key that I've learned. And it's realizing that, you're not going to feel good every day. You're not going to feel motivated every day. And that's okay. You're not supposed to. But when the motivation's not there, the athletes that decide to still show up and put in the work, even when they're not feeling good, or even when they're not feeling their best, those are the athletes that are going to succeed in the long term. So, just kind of, that reminder that, motivation ebbs and flows, but discipline when motivation is not there is what really makes a difference.
What would you say to those parents who have these younger athletes and they're supporting them? What are some things that you would tell the parents?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I see is just the pressure from parents can sometimes be a lot. Even if you might not think that that you're putting the pressure on, the impact that it has on the kid is still there. And I think that, achieving in sport, or the motivation in sport, like that really needs to be intrinsic. And it needs to come from the athlete. And so I think just kind of like reminding parents to really foster that sense of intrinsic motivation in their kids, and to maybe not quite put the pressure on that. Yeah.
Well, and on that note, I think we will leave it at that. Last thing though, where can people find you on social media? I mean, that's if you want to become well known. No.
That's all right. So the social media is okay. I am on Instagram as Hailstorm USA. HAIL Storm. Yeah, childhood nickname that ended up being a pretty good handle. So.
And do you have like a website or anything that people should check out?
Yeah, my website is HaileyDanz.com.
All right, there it is. You heard it.